Hey everyone, Matt here on the Vinyl Head UK channel. And once again, it's that time of week. We're going to carry on my download memory series. And we are already at 2012. It's flown by, this series. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am enjoying sharing these memories. I have a great affinity with the Download Festival. Every year since 2004. I just love talking about it. I love talking about the bands I've seen, the memories, everything. But we're going to jump onto a year, as I say, 2012. This was a amazing year. Maybe not so much for the weather, but we'll come on to that. But the lineup. Now, I talked about 2010. It had a really great, solid bunch of headliners on the main stage with AC/DC, Rage Against the Machine, and then Aerosmith. 2011, for me, was a little bit more disappointing. I didn't like the lineup as much. I didn't think it was overly strong. Bar maybe the Friday. The Friday was, for me, quite good, but I didn't think it was the greatest weekend lineup. But that changed back in my favour for 2012. Strong headliners, strong lineup across all the stages, not just main or second stage, across all of the stages. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this one with you. As normal, in case you have joined late into this series, this is all as much as I can remember from my memory. I won't remember everything. I won't have seen every band. This isn't a review. So if you're looking for a review of all the bands or whatever, this isn't it, okay? This is just me recalling what I can about that very year. So I've got my trusty lineup next to me so I can remember who actually played. But I want to try and dig into the mind of Matt and recall what I can for you guys. So as per normal, we'll look at who headlined main, we'll look at who headlined across all the stages, and then we'll dive straight into a very boggy, wet, soggy, damp, overcast, wet, rainy. Did I mention it rained? Download 2012. So, who was headlining? So that year, as I say, we had really solid headliners on main. So Friday night, we had stepping up for the first time into a main stage headliner. They'd already headlined second stage before, but coming in as a main stage headliner was the Prodigy. A kind of different feel. I mean, the Prodigy are very welcome in the rock and metal world by many fans. Obviously, a bit more of an electronic sound compared to the other headliners and other bands that have headlined previously, but still a massive band with a huge following, a one that went down very, very well at Download and had already gone down very well in previous years doing their second stage headliner slot. Saturday, my favourite band, returning back to Donington in what I believe, is their last Download performance. They haven't come back to Donington since this year, and that, of course, is the mighty Metallica. And they were coming to do something quite special that night, something they were doing across a few European festivals. And then, closing off Sunday night, they were back again. Black Sabbath, the pioneers, the originators of heavy metal, back at Donington, back headlining Download. What a great three headliners that was. Now, across the board, I mentioned what the stage were called. The stages were named that year. So, main stage this year was the Jim Marshall stage. Jim Marshall, of course, we all know from Marshall Amplifiers, had sadly died. So as you know, we saw a few times at Donington, the main stage was renamed in honour of him. The second stage this year was now known as the Zippo Encore stage. The third stage was now the Pepsi Max stage. It's back again. Fourth stage, the Red Bull Bedroom Jam stage. That mouthful is back. I can't imagine anyone called it that across the few years it was named that. And then again, we had a fifth stage. Again, it was the Jägermeister acoustic stage. So 5 stages again across the board. Each one actually had a proper title rather than just main stage or second stage or whatever. But headlining across these stages. So as I say, Friday, we had the Prodigy headlining on the Friday night. Second stage was headlined by Slash with Miles Kennedy, of course. Third stage, the Devin Townsend Project. Something I, had it not been for the Prodigy and Slash, definitely would have loved to have gone and checked out in that tent, in that marquee tent. I think that would have been pretty special, seeing that in there. Fourth stage. Now, originally the fourth stage was due to be headlined by Gallows. But, and I'm going to come on to this very shortly, a different band was put in as headliner, and that was Cancer Bats. There was a very good reason that Cancer Bats ended up headlining within this tent on this stage. I mentioned lots of descriptive words about the weather. That played a part. As I say, I'll come on to that one. The Jägermeister acoustic stage was headlined by Yashin, not a band I'm overly familiar with, but there they were headlining that stage. Saturday, Metallica, as I already mentioned, were headlining main stage. Second stage was You, Me at 6. The Mission was on the third stage. Again, not someone I'm familiar with. Cockney Rejects on the fourth stage, and Tyler on the fifth stage. Now, thank God I love Metallica, because if I'm honest, if it was a band that I don't really like headlining main stage, I would have been a bit lost, I think, as to where to go that evening. There's not really anyone that drew me in on those headliners, bar my favourite band in the world, Metallica. So thank the metal gods that they were headlining. It would have been a not so great evening, maybe. Sunday, Black Sabbath on main, as I say. Rise Against were headlining second stage. Third stage, another band that I really would have liked to have gone seen had it not been for Sabbath, and that was Periphery over on the third stage. Fourth stage was William Control, which, if I remember right, sang for Aiden. I'm going to say Aiden. I think I'm right on that one. Correct me if I'm wrong. And St. Jude were headlining our acoustic stage that evening. So that was our headliners. 15 in total. It's a lot of headliners. Main stage was very strong. And we're going to kick off on Friday with a bit of a somber note. It was a difficult way to start Download that year. We came in on the Friday morning. We came in late that year into the festival Friday morning compared to a lot of other people who got there Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. The weather was not good. A lot of rain, a lot of wind. It was very difficult conditions. We were travelling from only about half an hour away. Lived quite close to Donington at the time. And we were being dropped in, me and friends. And on the M1, as we got towards the Donington service turn-off on the slip road, we hit quite severe traffic. Not just fans or people going, there was people going to the airport, there was tour buses. Everyone was caught in this nightmare due to, I guess, for weather more than anything. It was a really horrendous day. And a lot of people, I think, A lot of a problem was people, day ticketers maybe, trying to get into park, and the conditions of the parking being very, very poor, slowing people down. Several cars in front of us we saw. Obviously, anyone that knows Donington knows it's next to the airport. It's not an unfamiliar sight to see very big planes flying very low over the arena as they come into land, or whether they're taking off from the airport. So people trying to get to the airport. Several cars ahead, a elderly couple had decided to leave their taxi or whatever, and they were walking. And unfortunately, the gentleman collapsed. It's a bit out of date now, but at the time I had first aid training from my work that I've done, and went into autopilot, jumped out our car and went down. Unfortunately, the gentleman was in a quite serious state. He collapsed, he'd hit his head quite badly on the concrete. And unfortunately, it didn't end in a particularly good way. There was a lot of consoling for the woman, the wife. And it hit home everything, you know. It was a difficult way to start the weekend. You know, it put a lot into perspective about, you know, life and people around you and friends and family. And, you know, a lot of people talk about the rock and the metal community being a family. Things like that. But yeah, it was a hard way to start the weekend. Yeah, not how you'd want to sort of, you know, you got to put things first, you know, there to help people and do the best you can if you see a situation, and, you know, try and help and make it right. You can't win them all. This wasn't, as I say, ended very well. So it was a hard way to start. Now, coming into the festival itself, we were notified on the big screens that the start of the festival would be delayed due to the state of the arena. They were trying to lay down like the straw that they do to try and just not make it as bad conditions. I mean, we all know what that site can get like. Anyway, was it 2015 or 16? One of those years, it was horrendous. 16, I think it was. Horrendous mud bog pit. And, you know, when you've got 90,000 people or so walking over this wet ground, it's going to get bad. But they needed to try and sort out, I think, a lot of wind precautions, so taking down anything dangerous that could possibly fall onto people. And so the first two bands, I think, were Rise to Remain, from memory, and then Cancer Bats. They were due to open up main, Rise to Remain, and then Cancer Bats followed. Both of their sets, unfortunately, got cut. This is why I talked about Cancer Bats coming in to headline the fourth stage that evening. Rise to Remain, I think it was Rise to Remain, didn't unfortunately get to play at all. But Cancer Bats did, you know, which was great for them. So, opening up main stage, technically, were then Fear Factory, who came on, I think was probably around about their actual set time. Friday always starts a couple of hours later with the music, so 1 o'clock it normally starts, so it must have been about 2:30, 2:45 maybe, by the time that the music actually got underway. And it was very interesting because as you look at the stage, you've got
divide down the middle, which cuts the main stage crowd essentially in half down the front, and it divides all the way back to the sound desks. As you look out, see stage right, stage left, stage right, all the fans were there down the front. Stage left, nobody. They'd cordoned off. They were still trying to work, lay straw and make that area less boggy and safe and not just a big mud pit. But Fear Factory came on, and it was so weird because you were down in the crowd, but you caught a glimpse on the big screens, and stage left would be playing to an empty field, essentially, an empty bit of grass. Suddenly, I don't know whether they opened it or the fans just went for it, but all these people suddenly went running down to the front of stage left and started filling up, and more people. And that's where I think the set suddenly became a bit more energetic. It must be hard when you've got half a crowd you're playing to literally just on your right hand side and nobody here. Very off-putting, I guess. Trying to focus your attention that side on half a stage. But the energy came alive. Very, very bass drum heavy sound. But, you know, for that industrial sound and what Fear Factory essentially are with these razor blade sort of riffs and the bass locked in and a lot of kick drum, you know, it's kind of, I guess, what we expected. Power shifter, replica, linchpin, you know, all the Fear Factory tracks that you'd expect. Burton C. Bell, who I know has recently left the band, Dino and whatnot. But yeah, it was a different Fear Factory set purely for, you know, that odd reason. You know, very different settings for a band challenging, I guess. Following Fear Factory, a band I have no recollection of. I didn't even realise they played until I looked back on this lineup in preparation. And that was NoFX. Not a fan. Never really been a fan of punk or pop punk or anything like that. I've seen them a couple of times. I saw them once at Reading. I don't think we really watched them. I think we went off and probably got a lot of beers to try and cope with the earlier events. And gather ourselves to, you know, not forget what had happened, but kind of, you know, enjoy ourselves without forgetting it, and I don't know what's the best way to describe it, as celebrate a life maybe. I don't know, it's kind of hard to justify it into words, like kind of the feelings and the emotions that were there, whether it was right to have fun and whatnot, I don't know. But following NoFX, a band that we definitely did want to go and check out, I've mentioned them a few times, and that's Billy Talent. Billy Talent were also cool enough to bring on Cancer Bats midway through their set. So Cancer Bats did get a song on main stage with Hail Destroyer. And then obviously they got that set on the fourth stage later that evening. But yeah, Billy Talent, I love Billy Talent as a festival band. You know, it reminds me of someone like Skindred. They're a band that I would go and see definitely if I can at a festival. There's tracks I know, a good few tracks I know without, you know, buying albums and whatnot of theirs. And you're just going to always have fun watching Billy Talent. Just a band where you know a lot of the stuff, as I say. And it's just fun, you know, Fallen Leaves, Try Honesty, Devil in a Midnight Mass, tracks like that. You're gonna at least sing along or hum along to the chorus or whatever, and they're catchy stuff. Billy Talent writes catchy tracks, definitely. So that was quite fun. I enjoy seeing them. After Billy Talent, we went back to the metal, and a band that had previously absolutely laid waste to the fields of Donington and the racetrack of Donington. Melted Faces. And that was Machine Head back once again on main stage. Now, I'd watched some footage of Machine Head the week prior at Rock am Ring, which I like to do. So Rock am Ring sits a weekend before Download, traditionally. And obviously, with the European festival cycle, especially with our American friends that come on over, and they play quite a few of these same festivals. So anyone that's playing Download that plays Rock am Ring, or Rock in Park, it's a bit like Reading and Leeds. Anyone that plays Rock am Ring, I like to check them out a little bit. I don't want to spoil what I'm going to be seeing a week later at Download, but I like to get a feel for what we're going to be seeing. And I watched Machine Head and I was a little bit nervous because they had a lot of technical issues. Now, I know that technical issues don't seem to travel from gig to gig. It's usually a standalone gig that we see these, but they didn't sound great. Considering, you know, we'd still argue that Machine Head were kind of in that prime for themselves. I know they'd put out another record since a Blackening at this point, but they still had a lot of momentum. And the previous times that Machine Head had played at Donington, as I say, band of a festival, pretty much each time, just absolutely crushed the place. Those festival sets that you absolutely 100% remember. And it was like, I want another one of those. I want that to happen. And Rock am Ring made me a little like, is this going to be the one where, you know, it doesn't carry on with how amazing they are? Still, I'm sure it'd be a great show, but, you know, they put on a great set. It was far better than Rock am Ring. Not, I don't think, to the same level that I've seen previous Download Machine Head sets or even Machine Head at their own shows. But still a solid set. Interesting set list. We got stuff off Through the Ashes of Empires, The Blackening, and Unto the Locust. Anything before Through the Ashes, we did not get. So we didn't get anything like Davidian, which was crazy and old, and, you know, anything 10-Ton Hammer, The Blood, the Sweat, the Tears, nothing like that, which was quite interesting. Now, yes, granted, stuff, especially off of Blackening, they are quite long tracks. So, you know, when they're playing Halo and I Am Hal and even Imperium, these are long tracks, so they take up a fair amount of time in probably, say, a 45-50 minute set. But not having Davidian, that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Massive crowd. It was like every metalhead at Donington made their way to Machine Head. A huge amount of circle pits. I read somewhere that they broke a record for the amount of circle pits at once. I don't know how they can sort of monitor that or you know, how that's official in any way. You could have like 3 guys going at each other in a little pit. Does that count? Or, you know, how does that work? How can everyone monitor each gig? It sounded a bit weird. I don't know. I've seen Municipal Waste do a world record attempt for crowd surfers, and I just don't know how you can officially monitor that. I don't know. But the stuff I read, it was like 25, 26 pits at once, which sounds crazy to me, but who am I to judge? It was a big crowd and a lot was going down in the pits, definitely, from where I was stood anyway. I counted like 2, but I'm only short. I can't see everything going on. Still a solid set, as I say. I don't think it was as good as, say, that 04 set or the, what other year did they play? 07, I think it was. Not as good as those sets, but still solid. You know, don't get me wrong, still a solid set by a band, I would argue, still at that peak almost of that momentum. After Machine Head, we had a massive change of direction in terms of genre and band. Following Machine Head was Chase and Status, which some people might argue don't have a rightful place at the home of rock, spiritual home of rock and metal. I thought it made sense. I'm not a fan of Chase and Status. I probably never will be, whether that's their DJ stuff or the live stuff that they do like this. But it served a purpose because a lot of people were there for the Prodigy, and if you like the Prodigy, probably gonna like Chase and Status, I imagine. They kind of go hand in hand to a degree. Not for me, Chase and Status, so we didn't watch them. You know, I saw footage of them from that show, and again, huge crowd, a lot of people. You know, it seems a lot of rock and metal fans very much enjoy stuff like this. This is why I think we've seen other bands like it before and after, like Pendulum, for example. Yeah, can't comment, didn't see. We went across to the second stage where we caught Nightwish. And this was in that period where I believe her name was Annette, but it was between Tarja and then Floor Jansen, who's with them now. So I think Annette, I'm going to say Olsen, maybe 1 or 2 max albums, definitely 1, which is Imaginarium, something like that. She was okay. I don't think she compared to Floor Jansen, their current vocalist, who is staggering how good she is. Tarja was a bit too operatic for me. I prefer Nightwish that's not Tarja. I know that's probably an unpopular decision for a lot of Nightwish fans, but Annette was okay. She danced like a mum. She was a mum, so that's justified. But she did this weird little mum dance a lot on stage. Some of her notes were slightly off pitch or out of key, but you know, when you've got a fantastic voice like hers and you're on the road constantly, you're going to have like bum notes or maybe off nights. The songs that she put out, or they put out on that album, I did quite like. I thought there was some decent stuff on that album. They did a couple, I think, that I knew off that album. All your typical ones, Nemo. I think they did If I Had an Angel. But yeah, I just really remember sort of weird, awkward mum dancing most about that set, which probably doesn't sound great for the actual set musically. It was a band who looked like they were enjoying themselves. I remember that much. I know that from the press, and not that you should always believe the press, but from what I've read and stuff, I mean, tensions were getting high with Tarja. I actually saw Annette Olsen a few times at festivals with Nightwish. I saw him headline at Bloodstock and Wacken, which I think was the same year, within a couple of weeks of each other, which was kind of cool. Nightwish, obviously, huge band in mainland Europe. The Germans eat up that stuff. So they were headlining over there. Very different in the UK. Still big. Nightwish sub-headline to Maiden, which in that muddy 16, I think it was, year, with Floor Jansen. But yeah, you know, I don't mind a little bit of Nightwish. I wouldn't rush to see him, but I don't mind a bit of them. But of course, we were there for the act after, and that is Slash with his solo band. So Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, I think it is, something like that. And it was a great set. The second year in a row, we got a really great Friday second stage headliner. Pendulum was the year before. Slash this year. It kind of not to again go back and touch on it too much, but the highs and lows. So the low of the morning to the high of just being surrounded in the rain by a lot of people who do not care and just want to enjoy this great music in front of it. It was like very like a healing thing almost from what had happened earlier in the day. But yeah, I mean, Slash was on the Apocalyptic Love album, so I think that was his second studio album or solo studio album. And you know, we still had the Guns N' Roses numbers. We still had Night Train and Mr. Brownstone, Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City. I think we had Sliver by Velvet Revolver as well. But we were starting to break away a little bit more into 2 albums worth of solo material. And now if you go and see Slash, you will probably get Paradise City and Sweet Child of Mine, but that might be it. He's got enough material now to fill out a full Slash solo material set. Second album in, you know, like I say, we were still getting the covers, which, you know, I'm never going to complain at. To hear Slash do, you know, Mr. Brownstone, or especially with Miles singing, you know, he sounds phenomenal on those Guns N' Roses tracks and the Velvet Revolver tracks and stuff. But it was a really, really solid, great show. And it was, as I say, quite therapeutic after the weather and the earlier events and stuff. But that was Friday. That's what I saw Friday. As per normal, let's go across the other stages and see what else we had. Second stage, a bit of a mix. We had Choir Boys, we had TerrorVision, who were very big back in the day. Opeth, a band I didn't get to see, but a band I love. Talked about Mikael Åkerfeldt before. I'm a big fan of Opeth. I've seen Opeth many times at many different shows and festivals. And I never get bored of them, but they did clash with Machine Head, and I did want to see Machine Head. I've seen Opeth, as I say, many times, so I could afford to miss one of their shows there. And then Nightwish and Slash. Third stage, so we had Lawnmower Death. Best of British right there. The Defiled, Soil, Axe Wound. So Axe Wound was a bit of a, maybe I guess, classed as a supergroup with Matt Tuck on, I don't know if he was vocals or he just was guitar. The vocalist, I believe, was a Cancer Bats vocalist. So he actually ended up, that was probably a bit of a rush to do the Axe Wounds set and then the Cancer Bats set straight after on the 4th stage. Kind of double duty there. Jason Bold on drums. And Jason is now, of course, with Bullet. But yeah, Axe Wound. And then, of course, Devin Townsend, who I say, had it not been for Slash, probably would have gone and seen a bit of Heavy Devi. 4th stage, Upon a Burning Body, Marmozets starting to make themselves known a little bit. They've gone on to do very well for themselves. So Marmozets get a lot of good press about those guys. Gallows, who were meant to be headlining. Of course, Frank Carter's just done the pilot. But Gallows were always crazy, you know, like an English Dillinger Escape Plan in the terms of mentality with Frank Carter. You never really knew what he was going to do next. Probably fight you. And then, of course, Cancer Bats. And then acoustic stage. So we have Breed 77 back once again for another appearance at Donington. Skindred doing another acoustic slot. I think they did one the year before. They, of course, played later in the weekend. And then Yashin headlining. I have to say, we did catch the very end of a Prodigy, but right from very far back after coming out and round from Slash. And it looked incredible. It really did look incredible. Huge crowd. Massive production for the band. And yeah, it looked great. You know, it did. Can't knock it. It did look great. That was Friday. It's gone to Saturday. So, another wet, miserable day. Ugh. We started on the 2nd stage and we caught a bit of Fozzy. If you don't know Fozzy, if you know the wrestler Chris Jericho, his band. Chris Jericho maybe should stick to the wrestling more than the band. I don't know, not for me. It's the type of band that they love on American rock radio. I don't think the tunes are that strong. I think it's going off Chris Jericho's name more than anything. They had a big crowd because a lot of people know him. But yeah, it's one of those bands that you see a lot on American festivals, and the Americans love that sort of stuff on their hard rock radio. Not so much in the UK. I think it's just purely because he's well known as a wrestler. The band we did want to catch were after, and that was Hailstorm. Again, back, so they'd, not that I realised, but they'd already done a third stage slot the year or two before. And they were in a low slot on second stage. Of course, they've headlined second stage. They've the main stage slots. But this was still quite early. I think a couple of albums in for Hailstorm. Already, you know, a great show at that point. Lizzie Hale, what a vocalist. What a vocalist. That woman doesn't have a bad day in the office with her voice. Honestly, so good. You know, Love Bites, I Miss the Misery. I don't think they opened with I think they opened with Love Bites. That might be in a different show. I don't know. Sometimes these memories fade into one a little bit. That's why I have to have the list so I can remember who played. I don't want to tell you about a different band from 2014 and you're all like, what's he talking about? But yeah, already a pretty stellar hard rock show from Hailstorm. They went on to headline that stage, 2019. Phenomenal headline slot that was. I saw that show. That was great. But yeah, I like a bit of Hailstorm. What's not to like? Lizzie Hale's now guesting on near enough every record out there. Give her a little bit of time, she'll probably be on the next Cannibal Corpse record. She seems to be everywhere right now, guesting on a hell of a lot of stuff. And then after Hailstorm, we went back to Maine to catch our first band of the day on Maine. And that was a band that you've heard me talk about many times. You've seen a vinyl appreciation video where I got extremely excited about them. And that is Saxon. I love Saxon, and it's always a great time seeing Saxon. I've seen them at the big festivals, I've seen them in little tiny shows, but you're always going to get a great Saxon show. They've been around for 400 billion years. You know, they'll probably be around another 400 billion years, and I hope so, because they're such a great band, and they're still churning out brilliant records. They have such an extensive back catalogue that is so good. And here they were doing all the tracks that you want to hear. So Princess of the Night. And the band's played on Wheels of Steel, of course, Denim and Leather. Yeah, all those pump your fists in the air, sing along, have a beer. You're treated by these phenomenal musicians. A lot of the old school crowd are there. The old Monsters of Rock rockers with their denim patches, their denim and leather. See what I did there? And it's a good time. I love Saxon. I love seeing them. Always so good. Black Veil Bride. Didn't see him. Not interested. So next, Trivium. Now this was interesting. Trivium, we've spoke about at great length on the channel. Of course, their very famous 2005 opening slot on the main stage where 40,000 of us odd of us found our way down to see this band that had grown hugely and had such momentum. We talked about a 2006 show where they got lost in themselves. They weren't Trivium, I don't think. They were trying to be, talked about Matt Heafy channeling James Hetfield. I still think an immaturity of trying to find themselves a little bit. There was second stage headliner shows that they'd done, but they were back on Maine. And I have to say, this was the first Trivium show I had seen where I felt Trivium had matured as an artist, as a band, as people. And you got a very slick Trivium show, which I think is the Trivium you still see now. They found who they were. They weren't there with the like 80s thrash get up, which we sometimes saw, like the high tops and the band t-shirts, and then, you know, Matt Heafy trying to sound just like James Hetfield. This was Trivium as Trivium, and they matured as people. And I thought it was a really great Trivium set. Really impressed by it. And as I say, I think it's a Trivium we still see now. I think they've stayed true to who Trivium are. They haven't kind of got lost along the way. They built up quite an extensive load of experience with touring. They were doing opening slots or support slots for Maiden and Metallica and various other big bands, a lot of their own tours. And this felt like, you know, a good, really good metal band that were themselves, if that makes sense. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy Trivium. I think they were still, although it had been out for a bit already, I think they were still racking around on the In Waves tour, like the back end maybe of the In Waves tour, if I remember correctly. They opened with In Waves, and then they went into, I think it was Paul Harder on the strings of Martyr, which, wow, what a 1-2 right there. You know, where do we go from here? And yeah, we'd got rid of the and all that cliche stuff. And Matt's voice was solid. He, you know, a lot of the screams at times he leaves to Corey on guitar. But his voice sounded so good that day. His clean vocals, his screams, he was hitting the deeper, not death, but the deeper growls. And I was really impressed by his voice. We had the Deceived, which is a really great sort of thrashier number from Ascendancy, which was quite a little treat, I thought. But yeah, I thought it was nice to see the band had found themselves and their sound and their style and who they were. And I'm glad to say that every Trivium show I've seen since, it was in that mold. They weren't trying to be Metallica. They weren't trying to be fresh out of the 80s with their high tops and, you know, whatever else. So yeah, I really was glad to see Trivium like this, definitely. After that, we went a bit, do I dare say, comedy metal for the next couple of hours. Steel Panther was on after Trivium. They made their way to the main stage for the first time in their career at Download. They'd done third stage, and I think they'd done second stage. They definitely had done third stage at this point. Yes, they had done second stage. And finally, there they were on main stage. And they drew a huge crowd, as you'd expect. They are very funny with their sort of 80s get-up, where they are very highly aiming at Motley Crue and Poison and Van Halen. But those guys can play. You know, don't just think they're a comedy act. Those guys can seriously play and sing. You know, you listen to some of their stuff on the albums, it's really good music. You know, they are serious musicians, just not serious on stage, but they've got the tunes to back up. It's not just like, you know, a comedy act, we laugh and then they play a song. It's like, just finish a song and say some funny stuff. Their music is strong. We spoke about Corey, got to speak about another Corey. They brought a friend on, Mr. Corey Taylor, Download veteran. He's nearly on par with how many I've been to. Corey was there doing a solo slot on a different stage. They brought him up for Death to All But Metal, which of course he did vocals on the album for that. The first track on the first debut album was Corey Taylor on that. And they brought him out. He was wearing his little farmer's cap. He was wearing a Motley Crue hoodie. He had wellies on. He was prepared. He was probably more prepared than most people, but he was a Download veteran. He knew what the weather could be like. You know, he's been there enough times with Stone Sour and Slipknot. He knows. But he had his wellies on, and it was fun. They had a lot of fun doing it. You could see that. The crowd were into it. We got to see Corey Taylor. Not everyone would have got a chance to see him because he's doing his third stage show. And it was fun. And yeah, I mean, I always enjoy seeing Steel Panther. You laugh a lot seeing Steel Panther, and it's nice for just like rock and roll. Even if it's a parody, it's still pretty, you know, fun rock and roll. And then a bit more, I guess, comedy came on after. And that was Tenacious D. Jack Black and Kyle Gass were here at Donington. I'd seen Tenacious D already once before at their arena show, and although it was fun to see them, musically, I don't know. I like the main tracks that you hear, but the rest kind of just felt a bit like filler when I saw them at the arena. I just wanted to see Jack Black and say, you know, I've seen them and I could sing along to Tribute. But I preferred them more at Download. I think they suited the festival lineup and the festival scenario a little bit better than going and see them at their own gig. Don't think the tunes are as strong as like the Steel Panther ones, but you know, there's still stuff that you can sing along to. I can't remember if they did Wonder Boy, but obviously that one and Tribute. I like the metal because it's metal. And yeah, they brought out this big like squid octopus thing. It's just a guy in a suit, but yeah, that was weird. Big green like octopus thing. I don't know what was going on. But yeah, I mean, everyone wants to hear Tribute. It's like when you go and see Europe and no one really bothers about the rest of the tracks. They just want to hear Final Countdown. It's kind of like that with Tenacious D. It's like, yeah, you've got other tracks, but play Tribute. Come on. Let's get it on. Get it going. And then, of course, you got 90,000 people singing along, or however many, singing along to Tribute. And everybody is bouting it out. We Are But Men, rock. You know, 90,000 people, whatever, sing along to that at the top of the voices. Mainly drunk, but it's fun. We have a good time. Following Tenacious D, we went to the second stage and we caught a band that I mentioned earlier, and that is Skindred. I don't need to talk too much about Skindred. I've banged on about them a lot. They are a great band to go see at a festival. They lift your spirits, they're fun, they got some good tunes. Benji Webb orchestrates that crowd, palm of his hand. You know, you get the tracks you kind of know, like Warning and Nobody, and you get to sling some clothes around your head with the Newport helicopter, and it's a fun time. It's a really great fun time. Following Skindred was a band who, again, I've seen a lot at Download, but this time with a new but old vocalist, and that of course was Killswitch Engage, who were doing their first show at Donington. I think their first UK show back with Jesse Leach. We only saw maybe the first couple of tracks. The reason for this, unfortunately, we had to depart to go to Maine to get a good slot for a little band later on. So we only caught the first couple of tracks, which was a shame because being a Killswitch fan, mainly a Howard fan really, but being a Killswitch fan, I felt it was important to see Jesse back for his first gig, returning to the band after Howard's departure. We got the first couple of tracks, as I say. I would like to have stopped and seen more, but we needed to go and get a good slot for the best band in the world, Metallica. Biffy Clyro was sub-headlining. Biffy Clyro followed Tenacious D. They were sub-headlining on main stage. So we caught a reasonable chunk of, well, I say a reasonable chunk, maybe the back half of the set. Now, this got a lot of stick from the fans of Download. Why Biffy? Why Biffy? Why Biffy sub-headlining for Metallica? This was handpicked by Lars, I believe. And if not Lars, someone in Metallica. I think Lars. He asked specifically for Biffy to sub-headline. Lars, I think, was probably at the beginning of this. I think he's probably still in it, but this kind of phase where he was really getting into like Britpop and bands like that. He's stated a lot that he's a big Oasis fan. Done interviews with Liam and Noel, mainly Noel, I think, and you know, he expressed his love for the Arctic Monkeys and obviously Biffy as well. He was starting to steer away from, you know, those metal bands and explore into sort of different stuff. If anyone ever saw I think it was the Orion festival that Metallica put on, where they picked the whole lineup, it was extremely diverse. I think 80s Metallica would have gone with a very metal lineup, except maybe Cliff. Cliff was into a lot of other stuff. But the other guys, I think, you know, a lot of thrash and a lot of new wave of British heavy metal bands like that. Whereas, you know, this Orion Festival lineups were very diverse. You know, we had like Biffy and the Arctic Monkeys and Bastille, I think, and stuff like that. Maybe not Bastille, I don't know. But bands of that vein. So branching out a lot. So Biffy Clyro were there by request of Mr. Ulrich. And yeah, it's interesting. It brings a lot of different fans to Biffy. Biffy, of course, you know, got to remember they've played Download a lot of times. And in all fairness, I mean, I'm not a Biffy fan. I'd seen him before and a support for someone else. But it wasn't too bad. It was okay. They've got some heavier moments in their songs. And they aren't bad musicians at all. A lot of different time signatures going on with the music. And yeah, it was okay to kind of stand and watch. But we were there for Metallica, so we got a good spot. So, you know, we watched the end of Biffy. They had a good crowd as well, to be fair. I think a lot of people would be the same as us getting in ready for Metallica. But, you know, a lot of people who were there digging Biffy Clyro, definitely. And then, of course, the mighty Metallica arrived. I think, as I say, this was their last Download slot that we've seen since. Every year we kind of expect them to be back. I think had COVID not been a thing, I think next year likely seemed that we could have got them. They've just announced for several European festivals. Hellfest is one of those. They've not done Hellfest before. Hellfest, I talked about Rock am Ring, is the weekend before. Hellfest is usually the weekend after Download. So I think probably would have had a strong chance of having Metallica next year, but never mind. They did something very cool that evening. So anyone that's been following this or remembers back then in 2006, we got Master of Puppets. From start to finish, we got the whole album, which is very, very cool to say I've seen that album played from start to finish. We also got a full album this evening, and that was the Black Album. We didn't get it start to finish, we got it from finish to start. So they came on a bit like they did with Master of Puppets. They came on and they did, they opened with a few non-Master of Puppets or Black Album in this case tracks. Then midway through the set, they did the album, and then the encore with One or Seek and Destroy or whatever. Yeah, they did 5-6 songs. They did something really obscure off the Beyond Magnetic EP, one of those tracks, which was very odd to hear that. And like Fuel and For Whom the Bell Tolls and Creeping Death, whatever they played. And then The Struggle Within, which is obviously the last track on the Black Album. And then they played it in reverse order all the way to Enter Sandman. I think I would have preferred it the other way around, to say I've heard Master and Black Album from start to finish, but it was still cool to hear that full album. And you know, a lot of those deeper tracks towards the end of a Black Album, you don't really see them play live all that much. You obviously get you know, Enter Sandman, Sad But True, Wherever I May Roam, Nothing Else Matters. All of those you hear, you know, near enough every set. But stuff like The Struggle Within, even stuff like Through the Never. It was really cool to hear some of these tracks. For God That Failed. It was really cool to hear these sort of deep cut Black Album tracks, definitely. And it was a cool experience. James went on this weird kind of thing that I think, you know, 80s James Hetfield would look back on and think, what am I doing, you know? But they had like the snake pit. We had that throughout the day, so the fans in that triangle in front of the stage, so they came out sort of into the crowd on the ramp that went round, and James was doing his sort of preach speech, I guess, and talk about the love. Everyone has love, and all of this sort of stuff, which, you know, is very the opposite of 1980s drunk, in your face, didn't care, swearing James Hetfield. And it got a little bit like, it felt kind of the Metallica version of sitting around the campfire singing Kumbaya. I'm not going to knock it. I love Metallica. They could do anything. They could fart down the mic and I'd enjoy it, you know. But yeah, it was a bit odd. But, you know, I don't care. It's Metallica. And I would have probably enjoyed it more had I known that they wouldn't be returning to Donington for God knows how many, you know, over 10 years. But there we go. Metallica, my favourite band. There they were in front of us headlining second day, not second stage. Who else did we have that week or that day? So second stage, Ginger Wildheart, Turbo Negro, Theory of a Dead Man. Again, one of those bands that are huge in the States and maybe not so much in the UK. And then You, Me at Six, as I say, were headlining. I saw some footage of You, Me at Six, and they didn't have a very big crowd at all, which is not surprising considering who was up against them. The same was the same as the next night. The second stage headliner the next night didn't have a huge crowd, but again, look who they were up against. It's not surprising. Third stage, Don Broco. Again, I've spoke about Don Broco have been really up on the rise, more so as a Reading band, I would say, than a Donington band. Turbo Wolf, Anti-Nowhere League. I saw those guys support Motorhead. Surprised Metallica didn't bring out the singer and do So What. The Treatment, Silosis, Corey Taylor, as I say, was doing his solo stuff. And then The Mission, who, again, I'm sorry, just not familiar with. Fourth stage, nothing really stood out all that much. Cockney Rejects headlining that one. And then the acoustic stage, we had Soil, who had already played that weekend. We had the Choir Boys, who I think had already played that weekend. Tyler as well, headlining. And that was our Saturday. Yeah, not a bad day, really. Sunday. We had a very metal day on Sunday, I have to tell you. The weather picked up a little bit as well on the Sunday. We even got a little bit of sun. Just a little bit. It didn't dry us out, but we got a little bit of sun. So, as I say, we had a pretty metal day on the Sunday. Really good day. Opening up main was a band I did not see, and that was Stellar Revival. Can't tell you much about those guys. The first band we did see, though, was Devil Driver. And Devil Driver would take in all the energy that we'd seen previously with Devil Driver in their shows at Download and pouring it out on us once again. Pits galore. Great band, a lot of energy. It gets people going earlier in the morning. Get people going, Devil Driver at 11:30 in the morning. It's going to wake you up. It's going to cure some hangovers. Following Devil Driver was Caius Lives, which of course, I guess was not really up on these guys, so I don't know too much, but obviously Caius. I don't know if it was legal issues or why they were now known as Caius Lives, but obviously it was Caius playing Caius. Again, not hugely up on my Caius knowledge, so I couldn't really tell you all that much about them. But a band I definitely know plenty about is Anthrax. Now, Anthrax were actually scheduled to be on the second stage, and there was a cancellation. I'm going to say Five Finger Death Punch, I think it was, who cancelled, who were due to play on the Sunday. And for whatever reason, they cancelled, and Anthrax were bumped from the second to the main, which, praise the metal gods, I'm glad that happened, because I love Anthrax. They're one of my favourite thrash bands. I never like always get the Anthrax set I want. I want to hear Death Rider and Metal Thrashing Mad and, tracks like that. I get a bit bored with hearing Antisocial every time, which is not a bad song, but I just seem to hear it every set they play. I want to hear some more of the thrash stuff. Like I say, Death Rider, I'd love to hear Gung Ho. I would absolutely love to hear Gung Ho. That is a hell of a tune. But, we got Madhouse and Indians. And I remember a very funny thing during Indians. So anyone that's seen Anthrax play and, knows what Joey Belladonna does during Indians, he puts on the Native American headdress. And he runs around like a crazy Native American. And he went down to the front. He came down to the crowd and he went across the front of the crowd. And then he got the headdress on and he was, running back and forth with all the energy that Joey Belladonna has. And then he came over our side and he was just in front of us. And suddenly he was tackled by a female security member who obviously took her job very seriously and had no idea that this was the vocalist. I would have thought the microphone and the fact that you could hear this man's voice pumping out of the biggest PA in Leicestershire gave it away. But she took him out. She didn't knock him down or anything, but he was on. So at the front of the barriers for the main stage, you have a kind of a ramp that security can stand on to get crowd surfers down safely and stuff. So he was running along that, and she grabbed him and tried to pull him down, and she was very intent on making sure that Joey Belladonna did not go back or shouldn't be running, because there is a kind of once you come out crowd surfing, you're not meant to run along the front. You're meant to walk very sensibly back out into the crowd. Obviously, Joey Belladonna's charging around in his headdress. So she was trying to do everything in her power to make sure that you don't run. You're meant to walk like everybody else. Absolutely did not realise who he was. As I say, how she didn't clock the big microphone he was singing into, I don't know. But head of security, whoever came and pulled her back, and oh, he's the singer. Look, they're playing. He's singing for them. And she probably died of embarrassment. And Joey Belladonna actually called her over and he put his arm around her and he made light of the situation. But it was just in front of us. It was so random. It's like, what's she doing? Get your hands off him. Someone who got very caught in a moment doing her job. She obviously wanted a raise or a promotion or something, I don't know. It was very interesting, very funny moment. But Joey Belladonna took it very well, I have to say. And good Anthrax show. I'd rather hear Gung Ho than bloody Antisocial though. So as I say, continuing on the very metal day, we had Black Label Society on after with a huge stack of Marshalls which you kind of expect when you have Zakk Wylde making an appearance. Lots of pinch harmonics, lots of wailing Zakk Wylde vocals. Makes it sound like I don't like them. I do like Black Label Society. It's just a lot of wailing Zakk Wylde vocals and pinch harmonics as well. But I still like them. They were on... what would it have been then? I'm going to shout out Order of a Black. Around that time, I'm sure it was around that time that we had that album, which I like that album. I mean, it's a good, solid album. Godspeed Hellbound was on that, which I remember them playing, which I really like that track. It's a great, solid track with lots of pinch harmonics and wailing Zakk Wylde vocals. After Black Label, we had Lamb of God, who yet again were coming back to destroy Donington. Anything that Machine Head didn't finish off, Lamb of God would quickly come and destroy the rest. They were on the Resolution tour. They opened with, I remember this one very vividly, they opened with Desolation and then went into Ghost Walking, which are 2 tracks obviously off Resolution. And then we went back into all the usual sort of, I have to say quite a lot of their download set lists are actually very similar. Because they always seem to have the same sort of slot, so a sort of 45, 50-minute slot. So they play what the people want. So a lot of their set lists, if you look at them, are quite similar at download. So obviously like Redneck, Now You've Got Something to Die For, Ruin, Laid to Rest, Black Label, I think was still being played at this point, although it was probably on the fringe of it disappearing for some reason out of the set. You know, it's, again, I always say this, but you know what you're going to get from a band like this. They probably don't really have weak shows. I've never seen a weak Lamb of God show. I've never heard of a weak Lamb of God show. Solid. Really solid band. Love them. And again, just like Machine Head, bring the intensity and just destroy everything in their path. A band who do have off days, and I think this wasn't their strongest day, was Megadeth, Megadave and Megadeth, who followed Lamb of God, as they did, I think, a few years earlier. I just copied and pasted a bit of this lineup here. I've seen Megadeth a good number of times in various lineups, as always seems to happen with Megadeth. They were on the, I think it was 13, the album tour. So we got a couple of that. But I saw Megadeth back in 07 or so, something like that. Man, they were on fire that day. Dave Mustaine had something to prove that day, as did the rest of the band. This Megadeth show seemed to have them kind of going through the motions. I don't know if it was a back end of a long tour or they were just a bit burnt out off the album cycle, or I don't know what, but just an off day. But yeah, it just felt kind of a bit going through the motions a little bit, this set with Dave and Co. Dave and Co. Dave Ellison, who was obviously recently removed from the band this week. We've actually seen Dave Mustaine erase his bass parts from the latest album, which was very Dave Mustaine. But yeah, I don't know, just kind of went through the motions. It wasn't that spit and that snarl and that venom that we know and love from Dave Mustaine. You know, an angry Dave Mustaine means a great show for Megadeth. He always has something on his chest he wants to spit and snarl out, but I don't know, just kind of going through the motions a little bit. I'm really looking forward to seeing them next year. They've got a second stage headliner slot on the Friday, so I imagine they'll be up against Kiss. And I'm really looking forward to that, actually. It'd be interesting to see who they pull in on bass. Obviously, the Jason Newsted rumours have all now vanished and been stamped on. But yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to seeing Megadeth next year. And I hope we get the spit and the snarl and the venom and the anger from Dave Mustaine and not just plodding along happy as lamb. Happy as Lamb. Happy as Lamb of God, maybe. Happy as Larry, Dave Mustaine. Changing up the pace, we stepped off the metal gears a little bit, and we had a band who I dearly, dearly loved, who unfortunately are no longer a band due to the very, very, very sad passing of one of the best vocalists in our beautiful rock and metal world, and that was Chris Cornell and Soundgarden. A returning Soundgarden after many years of being away, and it was an incredible moment to see him back. A lot of people never expected to see Soundgarden come back, but they did, and there they were. They opened with Spoon Man. I love that track, one of my favourites off Super Unknown, and there they were playing it in front of us. And I've seen Chris Cornell with Audioslave, and as much as I like, you know, the guys in Rage Against the Machine, I like Chris Cornell. I want to hear Rage Against the Machine, and I want to hear Soundgarden. And yeah, the crowd was huge. I don't even think that was in part to the headliners with Sabbath being on after. I think Soundgarden pulled that themselves, that size crowd. It was a step off the pace. We'd gone from bang, 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 metal, 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 Anthrax, Black Label, Lamb of God, Megadeth. We slowed it down for Soundgarden. Don't get me wrong, Soundgarden brings a different type of heavy compared to some of those bands. I think some of those, even though they're grunge tracks, I think they're very heavy tracks. But I mean, yeah, Spoon Man, I think Let Me Drown they went into. Outshined went into Jesus Christ Pose. We got The Day I Tried to Live, which is one of my all-time favourite Soundgarden tracks. I've played that to death, that track. I think it has an even deeper meaning considering what happened with Chris Cornell, which makes those lyrics even more personal. If they weren't personal enough already, you know, with what happened with Chris, made them even more personal. Hearing, you know, The Day I Tried to Live, and two deaths really affected me and cut me up when I heard of them. I've unfortunately seen, as I'm sure many of you guys have, if you're older than I am, I'm sure you've seen even more, but, you know, we've seen a lot of metal and rock brothers and sisters along the way. Slowly, you know, we lose them. Some have been quite sad. Very sad when we lost Dimebag, Chester Bennington, you know, many others I could name, but two really hit me. Lemmy was the first. I'm a very big Motorhead fan. And losing Lemmy was tough because we thought that man was invincible for all the drugs and the alcohol and everything. Lemmy was indestructible, and we saw him crumble almost kind of in front of our eyes over the last couple of years. I remember that Glastonbury show that they did, and Lemmy was completely on a different track. They were either I forget which one it was. They were doing Ace of Spades or Overkill, and Lemmy was singing the opposite, doing one of those two songs. And it was heartbreaking, but we kind of anticipated it, I guess. If you're human, you know that we don't last forever, and you'd be stupid to think that Lemmy would last forever. And, you know, ultimately he didn't last forever. But hearing that Lemmy had gone after seeing him every November, sometimes twice a year, but definitely every November on tour, it was tough to lose Lemmy. A lot of people raised up a shot of Jack Daniels or a JD and Coke that night, and I think Motorhead was probably heard from space that night with everyone turning it up to celebrate Lemmy's life. He was the one that, you know, got me, and then the second was Chris Cornell, a man in his prime, an incredible vocalist, incredible songwriter, and it came from nowhere. For those that don't know, if you're not really up on what happened, or your knowledge with Soundgarden and stuff, Chris Cornell unfortunately committed suicide. He hung himself about 4 or 5 years ago now. And that one hurt a lot, because I loved Audioslave, I loved Soundgarden, his solo stuff I really like, and he was gone, and that one really sort of knocked the wind out of me, and it did a lot of people. My band, we were playing a show the next night or a couple of nights after, and of course we threw in Outshined, and my band has a lot of influences through the grunge scene. A lot of fans and friends of ours are big fans of grunge. The band itself, my band, a couple of the guys, huge Pearl Jam fans and Soundgarden fans and Alice in Chains fans. So it was a tough gig to do, because it had only just happened. But it was not cool to lose Chris Cornell. But we got to see him in his prime with Soundgarden. As I say, the tracks that we heard, a lot of Super Unknown, which is my favourite album. And yeah, it was so good. Sun came out, massive crowd. It was just a celebration of these phenomenal musicians being back together as a band. And obviously Black Hole Sun, Rusty Cage. Perfect. We saw Soundgarden's last ever UK show as well, which was down in Hyde Park, which funnily enough, they sub-headlined to Black Sabbath that night as well. And they actually played all of Super Unknown from start to finish to carry on that trend of albums being played, which was perfect. And that was their last UK show down in London at Hyde Park before we lost Chris Cornell. So I was glad I was there for that. Definitely was. Following Soundgarden, we stepped back onto the metal train, and we had Black Sabbath. The originators, the founders of metal, on a very metal day. There they were. They opened with Black Sabbath. They opened with that track that started it all. And then, it's everything that you come to expect seeing Sabbath live. They don't go into deep cuts or whatever too much. They're pretty much solid on what tracks they will play live. If you want to hear something off Technical Ecstasy or Never Say Die, a deep cut off either of those, you're probably not. You're going to hear Iron Man and NIB and War Pigs. We got Fairies Wear Boots, which is probably one of my favourite Sabbath tracks. We also got Into the Void, which is another one of my favourites, so I was pretty happy. One of the years I saw them, they played Hand of Doom, and I don't know if it was this year or not, but I saw them play Hand of Doom either this year or maybe the next time they played, and that was pretty special hearing that. I think they did Electric Funeral, which again is another one of my favourites. I keep saying my favourites, probably all the Sabbath tracks are my favourite, but I love Fairies Wear Boots, I love Electric Funeral, I love Into the Void, and then of course Paranoid to wrap us up and that. So, Ozzy's not the best at that stage, his vocals are not what they were, but just to see Sabbath. It wasn't Bill Ward, it was Ozzy's solo drummer had come in at this point. Bill Ward was no longer doing Sabbath stuff, so it wasn't the original four. I was lucky enough to see the original four back in 2005, but it was still cool to see Geezer and Tony and Ozzy, doing Sabbath. You just pinch yourself when you see things like that, and it's not something we're going to see again. So it was even more special to cherish that. It felt very special. Looking back, it was something to cherish that afternoon and evening. Getting Soundgarden and Sabbath, two bands that we won't get to see live again. If we do see Soundgarden again, which I don't think we ever will, it won't be the same because it's not Chris Cornell. And that wrapped up Download. Let's quickly run through, because it's been a long one. Let's have a quick look at who else we had across the weekend. Cobra and the Lotus, Black Spiders, Rival Sons, a band I really love. Didn't get a chance to see him. Sebastian Bach, Ugly Kid Joe, Shinedown, Refused, returning again. Another band coming back, reforming and coming back. I think I would have liked to have seen that show, but unfortunately didn't. We were clashing elsewhere. Dropkick Murphys and Rise Against. Rise Against, as I say, didn't have the biggest crowd because they were up against Sabbath. Third stage, Heaven's Basement. Ed Guy. Oh, didn't realise they ever played. Massive in Europe. Kind of odd to see him on a low spot down on third stage because it probably, headlined a lot of the European festivals. Shadows Fall, Amur, Firewind, Ghost, and then Periphery. That was quite the one too. That would have been pretty cool to see. And then our acoustic stage. Oh no, sorry, the fourth stage. No, nothing really on there to tickle my fancy. Nothing that stands out. Fifth stage, acoustic stage. Again, not really anything on there that would tickle my fancy. There we have it. Download 2012. It was a good year. I really enjoyed it. Really good, solid lineup. Yeah, had a lot of fun. Really good year. Thank you once again for checking this out. I know these videos are quite long, a bit of a slog, but thank you for checking them out at least and sharing some memories with me. Don't forget, drop some comments, join in on the chat on any of these. Share your memories, share your experiences of Donington and Download of that year. I'll be back same time next week, of course, with 2013. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button, hit the bell for all notifications. I'll be back with some more vinyl appreciation videos. I've had a big stash of vinyl arrive with me in the last couple of days, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with you guys. So don't forget to check those out. But of course, I will see you all very soon. Look after yourselves. Go and check out Download tickets. We'll be back next year, of course. Go and buy vinyl. Go and listen to vinyl. I'll be back next time, 8 o'clock on Monday for 2013. But until then, see you later.